As a leader going through change, think about what's the worst thing that can happen here. One, sometimes the worst thing, not nearly as bad as what we're maybe thinking, right? No. Realistically, what's the worst thing that can happen?
The worst thing tends to happen in our head.
Yep. And they say fear can stand for face everything and rise.
That one of the ways to deal with change is right there. It's like think about what's the end goal, what's the vision here that we're going for the change, and that's going to keep us going.
All right, we're talking about change today, Tree.
Uh-huh.
So everyone, welcome to another episode of Hey, Don't Do That, where we explore the little things no one tells you that have big impacts on your motivation, effectiveness, and success.
Yes.
So thinking of changes, a big change people go through is moving.
Oh, I hate moving.
So true or false? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, on average, people will move in their lifetime 9 times.
Ooh. False.
Oh my gosh, you're right again. Is it more or less?
More.
Oh my gosh!
Because even in your 20, you probably move 4 times.
So they say the average number of times somebody will move is 11.7. It's almost 12 times in your life you'll move houses.
See, those decimals are always interesting to me. Like, how do you get 0.7?
How do you move 0.7?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's someone in there who had something happen in the middle of their move and they ended up going back. I don't know. But we're talking about change, and yes. I was thinking about this because we are going through change.
We are.
In our office. And
yes, we are.
Anytime we're dealing with a big change, I found myself really thinking about, oh my gosh, this is going to be scary. This is going to be hard. I don't know if this is good. What could go? And I found myself like fighting the change more.
Yes.
And then I caught myself doing that, and I thought, gosh, like, don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of the change. Because change brings opportunity. Yeah. And so often people are hesitant or afraid of change.
Yes. And they did this study, and this to show that people prefer things that is around longer than things that are new, because changes.
Okay.
So they did this study. They had this painting, and they told the participants, hey, this painting was created in 1905. They had another group, same painting, and they say, hey, this painting was created in 2005. Same painting, just different date.
Okay.
Which one do you think people like more?
Oh, I'm guessing the older one.
The older one. Because to them, it's like, oh, it's been around longer. It's just the mere fact that it has different date. The more recent one is liked less. So this is like one small study that shows like people like things that tend to stick around and they don't like change. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Because not only that, but we also know change is really the only constant, right? Like things
They say change is the only constant.
It's the only thing that's going to keep changing. And it's not, people are more than willing to change. Okay. If they see what's in it for them, if they see what's good for them. But
yeah. People move all the time.
Yeah.
11 times in their life.
They apparently move all the time. But it's at the end of the day, really, like, things don't change. People
change. Do. Right. The same thing we said about like organizations don't change unless the people in those organizations change.
And it's scary for somebody to think about changing the way that they've done something or who they are or how they communicate or how they interact.
Yes.
Because we have been doing things that way or thinking that way for years. Sometimes. Yes. And so it's a scary thought.
It is.
To think about, like, it's not just something else that has to change, but it's me.
Yes.
That needs to change.
Yes. And Tim Ferriss, he has this #1 business podcast on Apple. And he says, people would prefer to be unhappy than to be uncertain. They'd rather be unhappy than being uncertain. Because people don't like change.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think, when things are happening, people might be asking themselves, like, what if I can't do what is being asked of me when the new thing comes in? Like, what if I don't have the skill to do it? And I also don't know what's happening on the other side. What if it's scarier or, more challenging than that's what it is now? So like the skill and the uncertainty, that contributes to the factors of why people are afraid of change.
It's the losing of control.
Yes.
Right? We're in control in one scenario, and then when things change, maybe we're not in control as much as we were before. So there's a really popular model, the Kubler-Ross change model. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes.
But it basically, right, if you think about like put your hand up and then your hand dips down into a U shape before it comes back up, and it actually will end up higher. But oftentimes when we go through change, the first part of change is hard. And we feel maybe angry or sad or, resentful.
Yeah, we get depressed, we deny the change, etc.
Before we can come out on the other side.
Yes.
And so people will do anything to avoid those negative emotions, to avoid those bad feelings. And so if we don't change, I don't have to feel those things.
Yeah.
Even if we know in the long run the change is going to be good and really positive, you can't just jump. You have to feel some of those things or go through some of those things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah. And we talked about another idea from the previous episode, loss aversion.
Yeah.
You talked about it, right? If things are changing, I feel like I'm losing something important. And loss aversion says, we tend to feel the impact of that more when we're losing something than receiving something
Even
positive.
If I know at the end of the day I'm going to get more and I know it's going to be better, that loss is really, really hard to take because the loss comes first. And I think from a leadership standpoint, we talked about also uncertainty. And so from a leader, it's like if I say, okay, yes, we're going to go, we've seen this a lot in the last couple of years with companies saying, are we going to allow people to work remote? Mm-hmm. Are we going to hire people who don't come into the office?
Yeah.
Are we going to change how we go to market or poor supply chain, the shortages, the price increases, they're having to change the way they're interacting with customers. And we're asking people to change from a leadership standpoint, but maybe they don't know exactly what the outcome's going to be. And as a leader, that's a scary place to be because you're asking me to make this change.
Yes.
But I don't know exactly what's going to happen when I do.
See, and that just brings up a perfect quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche?
Yeah.
That says, when you know the why, you can endure anyhow. So like when the leader is not clearly explaining what's the why, what's the vision here, people are more resisting to change because they don't know what's the point, what's the purpose, right, for that change.
And the why is so critical, right? Simon Sinek's Start With Why. A lot of people have probably heard that.
Yes.
The why has to be powerful, right? It can't just be like when your parents used to say, why do I have to do that? Because I said so. That doesn't cut it. It has to be a really powerful, almost elevated why. So makes me think of maybe I'm guessing a lot of people have heard this, but about 3 people on a construction site.
Yes.
All 3 of them, you walk in and they're all laying bricks. And so they walk up to the first person and they say, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm laying bricks.
Yeah, why are you asking? Can you see?
I'm laying bricks. And then they go to the second person and he says, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm building this wall.
Duh.
And then they go to the third person and they say, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building a palace.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that third person who's probably the most influential leader, the one who could really help drive change. Anytime we're going through change in business, is our why because we have to lay bricks and we have to lay better bricks?
That's not exciting.
No. Or is the why because we're trying to build a palace?
Yes. So it has to be powerful, like you said.
Yep. As a leader, we've got to find what is that emotional, elevated why. And if we can really tap into that, we might not know how yet. But once we commit to the why, the how, it'll reveal itself.
Yes. Yeah. Another reason I can think of besides, the loss aversion that we talked about, the negativity bias. right? Immediately when we say, oh, there's going to be some changes in my company, immediately we think of the worst.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my job? Do I have to change? Do I have to gain new skills? Like, are they going to take away my work? We immediately go towards the negative.
So Dale Carnegie has some principles on that, right? So if we're dealing with change, he actually says, okay, think about what's the worst thing that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you're scared of a change, if you're afraid of a change, think about what is the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
The worst thing that can happen is that this customer is going to say, we're done doing business with you. We're never going to do business with you again. Right? The worst thing that's going to happen is my boss is going to fire me. Think of the worst thing that's going to happen.
Okay.
And then he says, you have to prepare to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is worst case scenario, accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he doesn't just say stop there. Then he says try to build from it.
Yeah.
Right? And so as a leader going through change, think about what's the worst thing that can happen here. One, sometimes the worst thing, not nearly as bad as what we're maybe thinking, right?
No.
Realistically, what's the worst thing that can happen?
The worst things tend to happen in our head.
Yep. So think about that. Then we say, okay, can I accept that? Am I okay with that? And then we prepare to improve. We plan to improve it so that the worst case doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But then even if it does, it's like, okay, if this is the worst thing that can happen, I'm ready for it. And then we try to improve it.
Yeah. Good principle to keep in mind.
Dale Carnegie has lots of principles when it talks about change and how we can approach change. You know, when we think of afraid, right? It's fearful of change. Okay. There's lots of different acronyms that you can make with fear.
Oh, you're going to give us an acronym from afraid? Okay.
No, not for afraid. That's too many letters. But
change?
Fear. No, fear. Because sometimes it's just that fear of change that we talked about. And they say fear can stand for face everything and rise.
Ooh. Face everything and rise.
Mm-hmm. So when you're dealing with some type of change, again, whether it's a change in your role, whether it's a change in people on your team, whether it's a change in your customers, a change in your products or services, as a leader, the best thing we can do is to face it and then rise above it. Because we got to think, what's that big picture at the end of the day, right? Not the bricks, but what's the palace? What's that why that we're going for?
Yes. And
then how can I say, all right, this will be hard. And gosh, look where we're going. And that's more exciting than the fear that I feel.
Yeah. So that one of the ways to deal with change is right there. Is like think about what's the end goal, what's the vision here that we're going for the change. And that's going to keep us going despite all the obstacles that we might face on the way there.
Yeah.
For sure.
So another strategy, simple one, when we're dealing with change is to use if-then statements. Okay. Your brain is a whole lot more likely to overcome challenges if you've prepared for them. So when you're dealing with change and you're maybe a little fearful of it or hesitant of it, we want to use an if-then statement, right? Okay. So basically you say if, and then you're going to fill in the blank with a specific challenge.
Yeah.
Okay? So if I go to my customers with this change and they're unhappy, then you fill in the blank again, right? Then what am I going to do? If I go to my customers with this change and they're unhappy, then I'm going to offer to sit down with them and give them some of my time to help them walk through, the new product that we're offering.
Yeah.
So if we have an if-then statement prepared, right? If we're thinking of, okay, here's what I'm nervous about, here's what I'm afraid of with this change, and then say, okay, let me prepare for that. Because if I prepare for that before it happens, when it happens, or if it happens, I know what to do.
That's beautiful. And it ties to the principle that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Prepare to accept the worst is like, if that happens, then try to improve upon it is then I would do this. Right? Ties perfectly into that stress principle from Dale Carnegie.
And because at the end of the day, if a business never changes or grows, like it eventually becomes stagnant, gets passed by.
Yeah.
And the same is true with people.
Yes. They say everyone likes to grow, but nobody likes to change, right? People like to grow, but they don't like to change. Mm-hmm. And just imagine you're sitting at your computer and your computer says, hey, new software update now. What would you do?
You just hit yes.
You hit yes and you update. But like when we think about ourselves, like when do we take time to personally upgrade ourselves? Right?
Because we got to change.
Because we got to change. We know instinctively that computer needs an update. And we hit update or we download some software to update it. But like we don't do it ourselves because we feel uncomfortable. We don't want to change. And then we wait until we're forced to change.
Yeah. So if you're in a scenario right now, maybe there's something that you're thinking of, or you're like, gosh, I'm fighting this, or I'm afraid of this change. One, think about what's the palace, right? What's that big picture that you're working towards? And then what if-then statements can you come up with to help get started on that change? Get started on the change. So, Tree, do you have an if-then statement for any trivia questions today? Like, if I don't know the answer, then
oh man,
what are you gonna do?
If I bomb this trivia again, the worst case is that, you know, I'm just gonna feel bad about myself for 5 minutes.
And then you'll be fine.
And then I'll just, you know, go get a cup of coffee from Starbucks. Then I'll feel better.
Okay, fair enough. That would work. Well, you're gonna have 30 seconds to answer 5 questions. Are you ready?
And these are related to change.
Yes, they all have something to do with change. Okay. U.S. President Eisenhower changed the name of a famous presidential mountain retreat after his grandson. To name it after his grandson, what is it?
The Rocky Mountain.
No. Mark Sinclair is the original name of what famous actor?
Mark Sinclair. Oh, shoot. I don't know.
Okay, you don't know. NASCAR in the Daytona 500. How many tires on average will a NASCAR car go through?
8.
No. Who sang the song Man in the Mirror?
Michael Jackson.
Yes. And on average, how many years does a U.S. coin last?
100 years.
No. Tree, you did your best. If you only got one right, then I still think you're great. Okay, so President Eisenhower, the presidential mountain retreat he changed the name of, was Camp David.
Camp Davis.
Yeah, Camp David. Have you ever heard of it?
I think they mentioned it in Scandal.
Oh, yeah.
I watched Scandal.
Yeah,
Camp
I don't
David.
really know what they do there, but I think it's just like a mountain getaway for the president. Okay, Mark Sinclair is the original name
of
Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel?
Yeah.
Oh, he's in Fast and Furious?
Yes, he's in all the Fast and His real name is Mark Sinclair. He changed his name. I had that surprised me. I didn't know that.
Huh.
I know. Surprising. Okay, how many tires does a NASCAR car use?
6.
In the Daytona 500, it will use anywhere between 20 to 28 tires.
Wow.
I know. That's a lot of tires.
I mean, they do go really fast. Like the dreads get worn out really quickly.
So it means they change that like 6 or 7 times. Like changes its tires 6 or 7 times.
Wow.
I don't know how fast they do it, but it's very fast. Michael Jackson sings Man in the Mirror. And U.S. coins, that's change, right? Change in your pocket. They last on average 30 years. So the next time you're in your car or like digging in your purse, look at your coins, see if you have any from earlier than, 30 years ago.
When you say they last, I mean like they become invalid if you use them after 30 years, or they just deteriorate after 30 years?
Yeah, I guess they just, I don't really know what happens to them. I don't know. Maybe they get lost after 30 years or they send them back somewhere. I don't know. But apparently they last on average about 30 years.
Random coin
trivia.
Like it cost a penny. It costs more to make the penny
than the penny is worth.
Itself.
Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah. I feel like if you do more trivia question on pop culture, then I do better. Like I know Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror. But
you're not up on your Eisenhower Camp David.
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, we talked a lot today about change. And so don't forget, when you're dealing with change, have a really strong why.
Yes.
Prepare for your challenges.
Yeah. Use the if-then statement.
Yep. Because when you go through change, you always will come out stronger on the other side. Nice. We'll see you guys later on another episode of Hey, Don't Do That.
Bye.